that we get to bring people together in a sense of unity and a sense of community by having a shared purpose and focus around making a difference.
I mean, I'm a big believer because I see it all the time, and that small actions really do add up. Taking a small action to do something does have a ripple effect. And that's what Alex did. I mean, it turns out that her ripples turned into waves in something much bigger. But that's really what she did. She had a lemonade stand, and from there it just set off a lot of other things happening that have changed things for kids like her. So it's if that doesn't show you that little things matter, I don't know what does.
Yeah, it's truly incredible. She created a tsunami of change.
She did, yeah.
Today on the Flourish or Fold Stories of Resilience podcast, we have Liz Scott. She's the co-executive director of Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, ALSF. Now, in addition to her role focused on eradicating and curing childhood or pediatric cancer, Liz also is incredibly proud of her title of mom to her 3 boys and, of course, her daughter, Alex. Alex was born in 1996 and she lived until 2004. It was just before her first birthday that she was diagnosed with neuroblastoma. And she lived the rest of her 7.5 years here on this planet, focused on not only curing her own cancer, but in fact, on curing the cancers of many other children that are impacted by these diagnoses. I'm so delighted and honored to have this conversation with Liz today, who carries on Alex's legacy and has seen to it that Alex's vision for how we can change the world one lemonade stand at a time continues to happen each and every day. Welcome back to Flourish or Fold Stories of Resilience. I am so delighted and honored to have with us Liz Scott. Now, Liz is the co-executive director of Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. But in addition to her incredible role leading this amazing organization, her most important role has been as mom to her 3 sons and her daughter. Liz, welcome to the Flourish or Fold podcast. I'm so delighted to have you here as a guest.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
We're honored to have you. So before, you even came on the show today, I knew all about Alex's Lemonade Stand. And now it's Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. But for those of our viewers and our listeners that are joining us today, and this might be the first time that they're hearing about Alex's Lemonade Stand, or maybe they've heard about it, but they just can't sort of connect the dots. Could you share with us about Alex's Lemonade Stand and the foundation that you're leading today?
I would love to. So my daughter, Alex, was diagnosed with cancer 2 days before she turned 1. The cancer she had was called neuroblastoma. And she went on to fight her cancer the rest of her life. So for 7.5 years, she fought her cancer. She died at the age of 8.5. But amazingly, when she was 4 years old, she told us she wanted to have a lemonade stand and pestered a little bit about having this stand for several months, to the point where I asked her what she wanted to buy because I was getting a little frustrated with her pestering. And she said, I'm not keeping the money. I'm giving it to my doctor so they can help kids the way they helped me. And it was really that simple. She just wanted to have a lemonade stand and give the money to her hospital. And I thought she would raise $5 or $10. And first time she held the stand, she raised $2,000, which was beyond anything we could have imagined. And fast forward in her lifetime, she went on to raise over $1 million. And that she passed away in 2004. She was 8. And now fast forward to today, nearly 20 years later, we've raised over $300 million, and all with the idea that we want to help change the lives of kids with cancer and their families by finding new cures and supporting the families.
Mm, absolutely amazing. So this went from being sort of, I think you said like a frustration for you, like, okay, like what do you really want to buy with this money? And here you are nearly 20 years later, the executive or co-executive director of this foundation, having raised $300 million. So let's sort of rewind back to that first lemonade stand. I think she set up on your yard. You thought she'd raised $5 or $10, but $2,000 came in. Can you tell us, can you rewind us and take us back to that moment of that first lemonade stand on your front yard and what happened?
It was incredible. So she set up in our front yard. It really was just a simple lemonade stand. She had a little kid's plastic picnic table and one pitcher of lemonade. She set up in our front yard. Her first stand was in West Hartford, Connecticut. That's where we lived at the time. And I told a couple people, stop by. Alex was having a lemonade stand. And I told my sister, who, as we were hanging up, I said, oh, by the way, she's giving the money to the hospital. And she said, oh, you're kidding me. And I said, I know, isn't that so, Alex, right? Isn't that adorable? She thinks she's going to cure cancer with a lemonade stand because she had a lot of big ideas. And she was always saying, she was going to do these things that seemed impossible. And she said, I'm going to call the newspaper. And I literally said, like, are you kidding me? It's a lemonade stand. She's going to raise $5 or $10. And in fact, I told Alex she was probably only going to raise $5 or $10. And she said, both my sister and Alex said, I don't care. So my sister called the newspaper, Alex set up her stand, and they ran a little story about her and on the little local section. And before we even were out and set up, people were knocking on the door saying, I had to meet you. I'm going out of town. I'm not going to be here later on. I wanted to make sure I got my lemonade. It was super hot. She was exhausted. She didn't love attention. So the attention was a lot for her, and it was really hot. So at the end of the day, I thought, oh, this was too much for her, right? She didn't enjoy this at all because it was too much. And I said, Alex, what did you think? And she said, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I realized then that, I had kind of been joking how cute this was. And I had lemonade stands when I was a kid, and I'd get $5 total or something. And how she thought she was going to cure cancer with this lemonade stand. Isn't this adorable? And I realized that it really meant something to her. It wasn't cute, right? This was something meaningful. And it was meaningful to us as her parents to see it happen. But the fact that she said it was the best thing that ever happened to her really told me where she was coming from on this.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And so you had this first lemonade stand on your front yard. She says it's the best thing that's ever happened to her. And you raised $2,000. What happens next?
We donated the money to our hospital. Life went on. We were very busy. We had two other young children at the time, and our family ended up moving to Philadelphia because we were traveling back and forth to go to the hospital in Philadelphia for some experimental treatments. And she brought her stand with her and started talking about having a lemonade stand again. We didn't know this was going to be an annual thing. We thought she had done an amazing thing with $2,000 and didn't really need to do more. She was, 4 going on 5, but she was determined, and she set up her lemonade stand in the Philadelphia area where we have lived ever since. And the same thing happened. I told somebody who told somebody, and before you know it, the paper was writing a story about her and the news was talking about her, and her front yard lemonade stand ended up going from 700, the first stand we had when we moved here, because I kept putting her off to the fall because we didn't know anyone. And I thought with the kids in school, we would have a shot at getting some families to come by, which I thought was
love
great.
How you were finessing this for her to build the community.
To build the community. So I said, $700 without knowing people, I thought was phenomenal. But at the end of the day, I said, what did you think? Thinking this time she would be like, that was great. She said, it's your fault. It was too cold because it was October. Nobody wants lemonade when it's cold. So the next year she started talking about it in spring, and that stand completely took off. One of her friends from the hospital had just died of the same cancer as her. And it was really the first time that we had to tell her. She was now, 5 going on 6. And I know she was in first grade. And we had to tell her that her friend had died because she saw her every week and they played together. And I knew she was going to ask, and I wanted to be the one telling her. And she decided she would have a stand in memory of her friend, Teresa. And again, I told a friend who told a friend, and the newspaper wrote a story, and it was this big, like unbelievable the turnout. She raised over $12,000, and her story started to be told all over the country. There was no social media, but kind of picked up in different media markets from the Philadelphia story. She started getting donations from across the country. She started getting letters from kids who had done their own lemonade stand because of her and wanted her to have the money to help find a cure. So very organically, it just started to build and build and build. And her stands every single year raised more and more money. And it was really magical, honestly.
Mm. It is such a beautiful story, and I'm fortunate because I've known about Alex with Lemonade Stand for a long, long time. I can't remember when I first heard of your organization, but I've been aware of it, and I've just loved the sort of um, child innocence of setting up a lemonade stand for her to think about how she was going to contribute and give back to finding a cure for cancer, not only for herself, but for other children that are impacted, by pediatric cancers. And it's so uplifting, and it's so inspiring. And there's also this moment in the midst of that where her friend Teresa passes away, and there's this tremendous loss. And as a parent, you're in a position of telling a very young child that her close friend that has the same diagnosis that she does is no longer living. And I think as parents, the vast majority of people are not in a position of delivering that kind of news. But we do deliver difficult news to our children a lot. And there's a lot of atrocities happening in the world right now. How did you think about, Liz, being the one to tell Alex and going before her and sharing that really difficult news with her?
It was hard. It's very hard to know how much to tell your child in that situation, because your instinct is to shield them and to protect them from knowing what we know as parents, right? That what we know, and that, her cancer was very hard to treat at this point, and that her cancer may not go away, and that she may lose her life to cancer. So then having to shelter her from that a bit, but then to have to tell her about another child who she so clearly identified with as a very similar situation, it was hard. And I don't know if I chose the right words. I know where we were when I told her, which we were like just kind of relaxing, I think, in my bedroom. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but I know I told her just very straightforward. And she didn't ask why, which I always found interesting. I think she knew. I think she knew why at that point. I think she knew that cancer was terrible. And if you didn't get rid of it with the medicines you were taking, that it would just continue, as she had seen in her life, to keep coming for you, basically. And she was teary-eyed, and that really broke my heart, because I felt like she was crying for her friend, but I think it was also a moment, even though she was only 5, that she realized that could be her. And it was tough, but you as a parent, you have to deliver bad news, like you said, all the time. And, you do your best, you do your absolute best to deliver it in a way that's truthful and straightforward, but being careful not for it to not be too hurtful, I guess. And that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, that doesn't come in our parenting manual, does it?
No, it
They
doesn't.
don't cover that.
No, it doesn't. And in the time, you're in such crisis mode as a parent, and survival mode, that looking back on it, I thought, well, I probably should have consulted with someone about that, or I probably should have practiced saying it. But it was, life was so intense, right? And you don't have all those resources at your fingertips all the time. So it was
That's
really
right.
like, I need to deliver this news to her before we go to the hospital in a day and she finds out.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess I did okay because she seemed to respond in a way that was positive, and she immediately said, "I'm going to do my lemonade stand for her and donate the
Mm.
money to fund research." And how she connected those two things, who knows? She was a smart little girl, obviously. So she recognized how sad it was, but she immediately recognized that she could do something positive in her memory, which I think
Mm.
is like pretty incredible when you think about it.
It's so incredible. It's so incredible because I think, so many of us and the challenges that we face, we feel paralyzed and helpless and frightened about what's going to happen next. And I think that sense of feeling paralyzed and helpless and frightened keeps a lot of us stuck. We just don't know what to do. And so we just stay in one place. And what I love about what you're sharing is even as like a 5-year-old little girl, she figured out, okay, I can't change this outcome and the loss of my friend, but here's a way that I can make a difference.
Absolutely. And I think that's really one of the gifts that she had that she shared with others, was that ability to say, you can't change things, but what you can't change the past. You can't change what's happening to you, but you can move forward in a way that makes something good happen in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Alex was diagnosed just before her first birthday. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
So the vast majority of her life until she was just 8 years old was really focused on her cancer treatment. And you probably knew for a majority of that time, what the risks were and that she could lose her life to cancer. Talk to us about what it was like for you, Liz, and your family to live through this moment of facing cancer and facing the potential for Alex's death.
I think it's a process. So when she was first diagnosed, of course, you're just reeling, right? And the world is just spinning, and you're trying to figure out how to keep your feet underneath you and how to move forward and how to take care of your kids, especially your child who's sick. So that's just like total panic almost. And then you get your feet under you and you feel hopeful. You feel hopeful. There was real hope. She had a path to a cure through chemotherapy, radiation therapy, surgery. When those things didn't work, then you have another moment where you think, okay, the worst case scenario for the worst case scenario is now happening. The first worst case scenario being that she had cancer. The second part of that now the known cures did not work for her. And I started to allow myself, because I had to, think about the possibility of losing her, but at the same time, move forward as if we were not going to, right? And move forward as if, we were going to do whatever we could to find the next thing that might cure her, participate in clinical trials, which as she got older, she was active in that decision and she wanted to keep getting treated. And just do all we could to potentially cure her. But at some point, we shifted to, if we can't cure her, we want her time to be the absolute best it can be, given what she's facing. And that, I think we did. I'm taking credit, her doctor did. But I think we did that as a team quite well for her. And now it's not to say she didn't have a lot of challenges and have a terrible time, but she really lived a lot longer than was expected. She lived 3 of her best years in terms of how she felt and what our manageable time was back and forth to the hospital. After she was told she was incurable, when we got her sort of on a plan to reduce her cancer as much as possible. And then at the end, when you know what's coming, I mean, that's hard. And that's something I'm going to say you almost can't prepare yourself for. But we did have, 7 years to prepare to get to that point. We knew it was possible. And you just focus then on making her comfortable, enjoying family time, doing whatever you can to get through and have a very peaceful ending to her life. And I say that like that's an easy thing to do. It was an incredibly hard thing to do. It's actually, it was the only word I could use for it. It was terrifying. It was an absolutely terrifying time to think about what was ahead for her and to think about life without her. But you do it. I mean, you do it because you have to. We had to be there for her and our other kids. Like that wasn't a choice, in my opinion. That was not choosing anything else wasn't an option.
Yeah. I'm listening to this story, and I'm just so touched by your bravery and, by the impossible situation that you were put in as a parent. I think about myself as a mother, my two sons who are 12 and 9, and, what it would feel like when I project and put myself in your shoes. And, I think one of the most difficult things that can happen to any person is to be faced with, the loss or the potential loss of one of our children. That love
it's not,
is just so big.
It's so big, and it's going to leave a giant hole. Right. And of course, I have other children. Some people lose an only child. The hole is still the same size, right? It's just that piece of that she filled in that hole is forever missing. But at the same time, I always feel like part of that feeling that loss, it's important to me because it makes me feel closer to her. Right. Like feeling her absence to me is kind of still feeling her in my life in some ways.
Yeah. That sense of the feeling of her absence in a way also gives you a sense of her presence.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. That's exactly right.
That's beautiful. For all of you listening in to Flourish or Fold Stories of Resilience, I want to share with you an online course that we have on our website. We're going to go ahead and drop the website in our show notes, or you can go to www.resilience-leadership.com and check out our offerings. We've got an incredible course for you called Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People. So if you love what you're learning about in this podcast, if you love these conversations on resilience, if you love hearing about how you can more effectively face the inevitable moments of challenge, change, and complexity, or the 3 C's as I call them, in your life, then go ahead and check out our online course, Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People, because what you are going to find is a one-on-one tutorial with me around each of those 5 practices, as well as an introduction and a conclusion. We've got hours of content that is going to allow you to engage in direct coaching and learning with me on the 5 practices. Go ahead and check it out, and I hope you'll join us in our online course, Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People. There are many people out there, Liz, going through hard things, not all of them, facing a cancer diagnosis of a child. You have been an incredible warrior and, are now serving as the co-executive director of this incredible foundation that was the beautiful sort of ideation of Alex while she was here. What's maybe some advice that you would give or some guidance that you would provide when people are out there facing hard things, when they've received news that feels incredibly untenable or just impossible? How does a person face something like that? What guidance would you give us?
I think, first of all, I think a lot of people go through challenges, and they don't need to be as heavy and as scary as losing a child or losing a loved one to be challenges, right? And people say that to me all the time, like, oh, I feel bad, complaining about this to you. But nobody should feel bad. If something is a challenge and is really hurting you, then it needs to be addressed. And I think the same process can probably apply to all of those things. And we all have challenges in our life. So I would say it is a process. It's not like, you mentioned like, oh, that I'm brave, or, people say I'm strong. We all have that inside of us. It's not like I was
We
born
do.
more special than than anybody else. I think we have it inside of us, and sometimes we're forced rather quickly to kind of test that.
Yeah.
Some of us like jump in because that's the way we operate, right? Like I'm a jump in kind of person, like, oh, let me fix this, let me get involved. Other people, it might be a slower process, but I think the important thing is to allow yourself to understand that what you're feeling is real, right? That it's okay to feel like this is a challenge, because you can't really change the way you feel. You can change the way you process it, but you can't change the fact that something is hurting you. What you can do then, though, is once you recognize that, is think, well, what can I do? Like, knowing this is hurting me or this is challenging for me, what can I do to make it better? What small thing can I do? What big thing can I do? It really depends on where you're at in that process. And I think sometimes it can be simple cliche things, that Alex taught us, like being grateful for what you have. I mean, that sounds like everybody says that. And does that really work when you're having a big challenge? I think it can if you practice it. Even if it's like a silly thing where you're like, I've always loved going to the movies, and I'm gonna go to a movie. I'm not downplaying the fact how hard that might be, and you don't feel like getting out there. But my point is, like, those little things, those little steps to getting better are real. And eventually I feel like those steps lead to a better place for you. I mean, but there are times when, don't be afraid to talk to someone, whether it's a professional or a good friend. Don't be afraid to use the resources that are out there available to you. Sometimes just telling somebody how much you're struggling, honestly, for me, makes a big difference. I mean, everybody's different. So it's a very long-winded way of saying, like, give yourself some time and give yourself some thought and give yourself some advice, just like you would a friend, on how you're going to get through it, because it will pass. And I know that's also something that people say, but I tell my kids that it will pass. What you're going through is so hard. It will get better. It will get better. But taking active steps to make it better and to make yourself process it better, because you can't make everything better. I couldn't change things for my daughter, but I could change the way I processed what was happening. I could change the way I reacted to what was happening. I could sometimes just go do something that was distracting, honestly, whatever it takes to just get through that day and say, hey, I did it. Here I am. And you know what? I laughed today, and this actually did get better, or I got some good news today, and just celebrate all of those things.
It's beautiful. And I think one of the things I'm so struck by that you're saying, Liz, is it's a really tough paradox for people. The ability to confront the reality of what's true today, right? To not gloss over that, or there's language that we have, toxic positivity or spiritual bypass, to really confront what is real and true and happening. And at the same time, be able to hold on to a vision for something better, or to be able to attach to what you can control, what you can influence. And I think holding those two things can really be at odds with each other. They can be paradoxical. It can be so hard to do. And yet I feel like you've described how to do that and how you've done it in such a beautifully eloquent way.
Thank you. I think what you just said was much more eloquent, but that is exactly what I was trying to say. I'm not one to say, like, gosh, you've always got to be positive, look at the bright side, because that's not reality. And when you're in it, it's almost painful to hear that. If someone said that to me when Alex was dying or shortly after, or even now, I would think, well, what's positive about that?
Yeah.
Right? What positive spin am I going to be able to put on this situation? But when you do things to make the way you feel about it change, right? And to embrace, the memories, and to think about what you have left to live for. I think that's what I mean by gratitude, like what you have left to live for, um, is a path forward, and it is a way to feel positive. But nobody can be positive all the time. I do think that's kind of toxic.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you began to touch on, things that you wouldn't want to hear or things not to say. You know, I think it's so tempting. So here's a dumb thing that I think people say. One of the things that I think that we should not say, is that everything happens for a reason. Like I'm a real strong disliker of that because I feel like it does two things. One, it suggests that there's some kind of reason that we could be aware of in a abyss of not understanding how something like what is happening could happen. And then it also suggests that like somehow that reason is knowable or understandable. And I just don't think it is. So I always, say, gosh, if we could just stop saying like everything happens for a reason, we can say it to ourselves, but just not say that to other people. What are your thoughts on that, Liz? And are there other things that in your experience, like when someone is going through something hard or facing the loss of a loved one, like just let's not say these things anymore?
Yes, I think saying everything happens for a reason is well-meaning, but can be very hurtful to the person receiving that comment. As you can imagine, like put yourself in my shoes, everything happens for a reason. And you think, okay, what reason could there possibly be that my child suffered for 7.5 years through cancer treatment? Right.
Yeah.
I would say that's one. I think, they're in a better place. I think at this point, people know that is a very hard thing for people to hear. And you may believe that. And I mean, I may believe it, but saying that to someone else when they've lost someone, especially a child, because I would think to myself, well, what better place is there than with her brothers and her parents and letting her grow up, right? And be with her family. And then I think just the idea that, you don't get more than you can handle. Right. I mean, that's also like when you start to think about that, you're like, well, that's actually someone maybe giving you a compliment, like of how strong you are. But then you think, well, gosh, if I wasn't, so strong, maybe my child wouldn't have been sick. Right. I mean, there's just things you have to realize the person you're saying it to is in a state of mind where they may be looking at words differently. They may be thinking about things differently. The most helpful thing I think you can say is, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm here for you. Is there anything I can do to help you? And that's really it. Right. And just knowing that the person is hurting and that you are someone who recognizes that is probably the best thing you can make somebody feel, recognizes how hard it is for them.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Thank you for that. I want to fast forward. We sort of did a little rewind here to the first Lemonade Stand and this incredible way that the community in West Hartford, Connecticut showed up. And then, how you were able to sort of reinvent this connectivity to community in the Philadelphia area. And now here we are. Alex was born in 1996. She was with us in 2004 until 2004. So nearly 20 years later, here we are still with Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. Talk to us, Liz, about what's happening in the foundation today, how you are honoring Alex's legacy in a beautiful way. And by the way, I'll just say, because I know so many people listen to podcasts while they're exercising, while you're driving, just go ahead, write yourself a quick note if you can. Take a screenshot of the podcast on your phone. So when you're going back through your photos, because you are going to want to go to the Alex's Lemonade Stand website, and you're going to want to get involved, because what you're doing, Liz, I know you're going to tell us about it. It is just profound the way that you have amplified Alex's efforts and are in the process of funding at a really large scale cures for pediatric cancer. So talk to us about what Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation is doing today.
I would love to. So, what we're doing today is directly a reflection, which I think is really beautiful, of what Alex wanted. Very early in her fundraising, when she had raised about $30,000 or $40,000, and we were donating it to the hospital here in Philadelphia to fund neuroblastoma research, she started questioning that, and she pushed on it, and she said, "What are they doing with the money?" And I said, "They're using it to try to find new ways to cure neuroblastoma." And she knew what that meant. And she said, "That is so selfish. All kids want their tumors to go away." That's what she called their cancer. All kids want their tumors to go away. We should be giving money to all different hospitals for all different kids, which we took to mean all different kids' cancers. So we really got to work with her back then, and we have continued to push on the what are they doing with the money since. And as a result, now we've been able to fund more than 1,000 different research projects at 150 different hospitals and institutions, looking at virtually every type of pediatric cancer, because there's more than 23 different kinds, all with the idea that we need less toxic treatments for kids, especially, ultimately, that don't involve chemotherapy, radiation therapy, or even surgery is the ultimate goal, and more targeted therapies that are going to cure the kids in a smarter way. And we really need to start curing the kids who were previously incurable. So that's our big goals. We are making progress. Of course, it's not fast enough, but we have seen survival rates go up, and we have seen previously incurable kids cured as a result of the funding. And we've met some of those families, which is just amazing, because we don't have direct access to them, but they come to us and say, "I just want you to know my child is here. My doctor told me Alex's story and said that my child is here because of Alex." That this, and these parents, every one of them, their kid was told they were incurable, just like us, and they decided to take a chance on a clinical trial, and their kids were cured. And that's amazing progress.
That's amazing progress. That's amazing progress.
It really is. And, we learned last year that if Alex was diagnosed, today we had her tumor sequenced, she would most likely be one of those kids who would be cured because of a discovery that one of our funded researchers made. And then we gave her funding to get this new targeted therapy into kids. And she's been having great success with it for many years now. And those are a lot of the families we've met. So that's pretty extraordinary on the one hand. It's pretty hard to think about on the other hand, that if things had just happened faster, they may have been ready for Alex, but the technology wasn't there and the knowledge wasn't there. So I think the best outcome now that we can have is that we know that we finally cured her.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Unfortunately, the time horizon being what it is, you said it just, research never goes fast enough. And yet, the another version of that story is that Alex has realized her dream. She did cure her cancer with her lemonade stand.
She did. It's amazing. It's amazing. We're so lucky.
I promised you I'd try to hold it together. So I'm so touched by your story, and I've known about Alex's Lemonade Stand for some time. Such incredible, beautiful work you're doing. We're going to have the information on Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, the website, in the show notes. What else would you like to share with us, Liz? There are people listening today that are thinking somewhere on a continuum of, it's getting to be the end of 2023. I've got an opportunity to donate, some money to charity. I've been meaning to do this all year. And yet, here is an opportunity for me to really show up and make a difference in the world through charitable donations. How can people get involved? How do you like to have people involved with Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation? Obviously, there's an opportunity to donate money? Do you also have events? What are the opportunities for people to get involved with you?
We have many opportunities. So we always love donations, and I know end of year is a big time for
Donations are
giving.
great.
Donations are great, but really most of our money comes from people engaging with us. So that means for us, that means everything from having a lemonade stand, especially if you have young children or grandchildren, or you work in a school, getting kids involved, getting the next generation empowered to see that they can make a difference in the world. That's one way. We have other events, like in September, we have a fitness event all month long. We have events that happen, special events. We have several in Philadelphia. We have a big one in Los Angeles. And really, we just encourage people to get involved in any way that suits them. I mean, that's what Alex did. There shouldn't be a barrier to somebody getting involved with us. If you sign up to do a lemonade stand, we're not requiring you to raise a certain amount of money or donate a dime even. We just want you to get out there and see what you can do. And that's what we're about. It's like everybody can come together and help cure childhood cancer, which is the number one disease killer of kids in this country. Everybody can be a part of changing that. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I think that's why her lemonade stand took off. Because we're open to everybody. Everybody can get involved.
It's such an incredible story about democratizing, making it available to all, making a difference is available to all of us. And that is so easy to forget. It's so easy to forget in the moments when we feel helpful or helpless and scared and paralyzed, to realize that, yes, there is something we can do, no matter how small, no matter how big the idea. And I love that you are reminding people that everyone can be part of making a difference, and everyone can be part of making a change, and that we get to bring people together in a sense of unity and a sense of community by having a shared purpose and focus around making a difference.
I mean, I'm a big believer, because I see it all the time, and that small actions really do add up. Taking a small action to do something does have a ripple effect. And that's what Alex did. I mean, it turns out that her ripples turned into waves in something much bigger. But that's really what she did. She had a lemonade stand. And from there, it just set off a lot of other things happening that have changed things for kids like her. So it's if that doesn't show you that little things matter, I don't know what does.
Yeah, it's truly incredible. She created a tsunami of change.
She did. Yeah.
Amazing. Liz, so incredible to have you on the Flourish or Fold Stories of Resilience podcast today. I'm just so honored that you took time out of your day to be here with me. You've been an incredible guest. Thank you so much for sharing more with us about Alex, allowing us to know more about her during her life, and also sharing the legacy of Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation.
Thank you so much.
I am so deeply touched by Alex's story, by Liz sharing the story of the beautiful person that Alex was, and her legacy continues to live on. One of the things that really stuck out to me today in this conversation was about how, as a parent, one of the just most frightening things that we can face is the prospect of losing our child. And Liz so eloquently talked about what it meant to her and to her family to receive that worst case scenario cancer diagnosis. And then when the treatments didn't work, the chemo, the radiation, the surgery, to then be faced with what she called the worst case scenario. For me, one of the most beautiful and one of the most heartbreaking things about this conversation is that just what Liz said, that Alex set out initially to cure her own cancer, and then felt like she wanted to help by donating money to research to be able to cure other cancers, other kids who had tumors, as Alex said. And what we got to hear from Liz today is that even though these treatments have been developed over time, and as a result of the money that's been raised, over $300 million since its inception, Alex did have the opportunity to cure her own cancer. Her dream has in fact come true. and she has cured so many other children that have had diagnoses just like hers. Thank you for being here for the Flourish or Fold podcast. It's a delight and an honor to have you listen and to be one of our audience members. I look forward to connecting with you, and please do like, subscribe, share this episode with other people, and I love feedback. So leave us a review and let me know how we're doing. What would you like to hear from us? Thank you as always for being part of our community. It's a joy and an honor to be here with you. Until next time, this is Dr. Taryn Murray. For all of you listening in to Flourish or Fold Stories of Resilience, I want to share with you an online course that we have on our website. We're going to go ahead and drop the website in our show notes, or you can go to www.resilience-leadership.com and check out our offerings. We've got an incredible course for you called Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People. So if you love what you're learning about in this podcast, if you love these conversations on resilience, if you love hearing about how you can more effectively face the inevitable moments of challenge, change, and complexity, or the 3 C's as I call them, in your life, then go ahead and check out our online course, Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People, because what you are going to find is a one-on-one tutorial with me around each of those 5 practices, as well as an introduction and a conclusion. We've got hours of content that is going to allow you to engage in direct coaching and learning with me on the 5 practices. Go ahead and check it out, and I hope you'll join us in our online course, Flourish, the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People.